There's a moment in every person's life when they realize they've been playing a role they never auditioned for. For me, that moment came on a Tuesday afternoon in March. My phone buzzed with another text, another emergency, another so-called favor. But this time, something was different. This time, I was about to say the one word that would change everything. So, this is the story of how I stopped being their ATM and finally started being myself. My name is Sarah. Well, not really, but for the sake of this story, let's call me Sarah. I grew up as what people call the responsible one, the eldest daughter in a middle-class family in Ohio. My parents worked hard. Dad spent 30 years in construction, coming home every night with dust in his hair and exhaustion in his eyes. Mom worked as a school aide, helping other people's children learn to read while barely making enough to cover our groceries. We weren't rich, but we weren't poor either. We were somewhere in that gray zone where one emergency could topple everything. I learned early that love came with conditions. Good grades meant hugs and praise mess up, and you got silence, disappointment, and the cold shoulder that lasted for days. So I became perfect, or at least I tried to be. I got scholarships because my parents couldn't afford to send me to college. I worked 2 jobs through my 4 years. Waitressing on weekends and tutoring during the week, I graduated debt-free with a degree in computer science, while my younger brother dropped out after 1 semester of partying, and my sister bounced between retail jobs, never staying anywhere longer than 6 months. By the time I turned 25, I had landed a 6-figure job at a tech company in Austin. I had a nice apartment with actual furniture, not just hand-me-downs and thrift store finds. I had savings in my bank account. For the first time in my life, I felt like I had made it. I felt secure. I felt proud. And that's when it started. The phone calls that would define the next decade of my life. It began innocently enough. Mom called one evening, her voice tight with stress. "Sarah, honey, can you help with the electric bill this month? Your dad's hours got cut and we're a little short, just this once." I sent $200 without hesitation because that's what good daughters do, right? That's what family means. You help when someone's down. But just this once became every month. The electric bill turned into the water bill, then the car insurance, then the credit card minimum payment they couldn't cover. My brother's car broke down and suddenly I was covering an $800 repair. My sister needed help with rent because her roommate bailed. My parents were short on the mortgage payment because of an unexpected medical bill. Every time, I said yes, every single time. Because in my family, saying no wasn't an option. It was betrayal. What started as occasional help became a pattern I couldn't escape. Over the next 10 years, I wasn't just helping anymore. I had become their financial plan, their safety net, their emergency fund. I paid for my brother's DUI lawyer fees, $3,500 that he swore he'd pay back, but never did. I covered my sister's entire wedding because she deserved a special day, even though I had to max out my credit card to do it. $8,000 for someone else's dream. While I put my own dreams on hold, I sent money for car payments, insurance premiums, medical bills, furniture they couldn't afford, emergency after emergency that somehow always happened right before they got paid. The requests became so frequent that I started budgeting for them. I'd set aside money each month knowing someone would need something. And the worst part? No one ever paid me back, not once. Not a single dollar returned. Instead of gratitude, I got resentment. My brother would post pictures on social media from concerts and weekend trips. While I had just sent him rent money, my sister would show off her new designer handbag while still owing me thousands from her wedding. When I gently mentioned the money they owed, I was met with excuses, defensiveness, or outright hostility. "You make so much money, Sarah. Why does it even matter? It's not like you need it." My parents played the guilt card like professionals. "After everything we did for you, you can't help out your own family? We raised you, fed you, put a roof over your head. Family takes care of family. What's wrong with you? Have you become one of those selfish career people who forgets where they came from?" Those words cut deeper than any debt ever could. Meanwhile, I was living like a broke college student. I had money in my account, but it wasn't really mine. It belonged to them, always theirs, always spoken for, before I even earned it. I canceled the vacation to Thailand I'd been planning for 2 years because my dad needed a new roof. I put off buying a house because my brother needed help with another crisis. I drove a 15-year-old Honda with 200,000 miles on it because someone else always needed something more urgently than I needed reliable transportation. I was exhausted, not just financially, but emotionally and spiritually. I was disappearing piece by piece, and no one even noticed. When I tried to talk about my own stress, my own struggles, my own dreams, the conversation always shifted back to their problems. My feelings were inconvenient. My needs were selfish. My boundaries were offensive. I started having panic attacks at work. I couldn't sleep without checking my bank account 3 times. I felt physically sick every time my phone rang. This wasn't love. This wasn't family. This was something else entirely, something darker that I didn't have words for yet. The breaking point came on an ordinary Tuesday in March, a day that started like any other. I was at work finishing a presentation for a client meeting when my phone rang. Dad's name flashed on the screen, and my stomach immediately dropped into my shoes. Important calls from Dad were never good news. They were expensive news. I stepped into an empty conference room and answered, "Sarah, honey, we need to talk about something important. Your brother's got some good news. He wants to buy a house. He's been with Jessica for 2 years now, and they want to settle down, start building something real. But there's a problem. His credit isn't great, and the bank won't approve him for a mortgage without a cosigner. We were hoping you could help him out with this." I sat in my car in the parking garage after that call for 45 minutes, unable to turn the key in the ignition. Co-sign a mortgage. They wanted me to co-sign a mortgage for my brother, for someone who had never paid me back a single dollar in 10 years, for someone who had wrecked 3 cars, defaulted on student loans he never should have taken, and blamed everyone but himself for every failure in his life. If he defaulted, which knowing his track record was practically guaranteed, I wouldn't just lose money. I'd lose my credit score, my ability to buy my own home, my financial future. I'd be legally responsible for hundreds of thousands of dollars for a house I'd never live in, for a life that wasn't mine. And suddenly, sitting there in my car, it all came rushing back with brutal clarity. Every time I'd said yes when I meant no. Every time I'd swallowed my anger and resentment. Every time I'd put myself last and called it love. Every time I'd sacrificed my own stability for people who saw me as a solution. Not a sister, not a daughter, just a resource to be used. I pulled out my phone and started typing. I typed and deleted a dozen different responses. I'll think about it. Delete. Can we talk about this later when I've had time to consider the implications? Delete. I'm not sure I'm the right person for this kind of responsibility. Delete. I'm sorry, but I'm not comfortable with that level of financial commitment right now. Delete. Every response felt like a negotiation, like I owed them an explanation, like I needed permission to protect myself. And then something shifted inside me, a clarity I'd never felt before, sharp and undeniable. I stopped deleting. I typed 3 words, just 3 simple words that I'd never said to them before in my entire life. I'm not co-signing. No explanation, no apology, no justification. Just the truth, clean and simple. I hit send, and the moment I did, my hands started shaking. Not from fear, exactly, but from the seismic shift of finally standing up for myself. Within 10 minutes, my phone erupted like a bomb had gone off, message after message, call after call. The notifications wouldn't stop. Mom texted first. "Sarah, call your father right now. We need to talk about this. This isn't a discussion you have over text." Then Dad. "We need to discuss this immediately. This isn't like you, Sarah. What's gotten into you?" My brother chimed in with something that made my blood boil. "Seriously? After everything? After all the times we've been there for you? This is how you repay family?" My sister, who I hadn't heard from in 3 months except when she needed something, sent a paragraph about how disappointed she was in me. Wow, Sarah. I guess we know where we stand now. I guess money is more important to you than your own blood. I always knew you thought you were better than us. I let the phone buzz and light up the dark room. For the first time in my adult life, I didn't answer. I didn't explain. I didn't defend myself. I just sat there in the silence I'd created, terrified and liberated in equal measure. The next few weeks felt like walking through fire. I was uninvited from Sunday dinners, a tradition I'd never missed in 35 years. I was blocked on social media by my sister and brother. My mother left a voicemail that I must have listened to 50 times, her voice breaking as she cried about how I'd changed, how I'd become selfish and cold, how success had ruined me. Your father and I are heartbroken, Sarah. We don't even recognize you anymore. My brother sent a 5-paragraph text message about family loyalty, conveniently forgetting the $15,000 I'd given him over the years. Money he'd never acknowledged, never appreciated, never paid back. He talked about sacrifice and love as if he knew anything about either. The guilt was suffocating, a physical weight on my chest that made it hard to breathe. Maybe I was wrong. Maybe I was being selfish. Maybe I should have just said yes one more time to keep the peace, to keep my family, to keep being the person they needed me to be, even if that person wasn't really me. But then I did something I'd been putting off for years because I was too busy helping everyone else. I went to therapy. I found a therapist who specialized in family dynamics and financial abuse, and I told her everything, every detail, every dollar, every moment of manipulation disguised as love. She listened without judgment, and then she asked me a question that changed everything. Sarah, when was the last time someone in your family asked how you were doing? Not what you could do for them, not what they needed from you, but genuinely asked about your life, your feelings, your dreams, your struggles. I sat there in that comfortable chair and couldn't answer. I couldn't think of a single time. Not one. Because they never had. Every conversation was about them, their needs, their emergencies, their lives. I was a supporting character in everyone else's story, never the protagonist of my own. My therapist had me do an exercise. She asked me to write down every time I'd said yes when I wanted to say no, every time I'd sacrificed my own well-being for theirs, every time I'd been their solution while drowning in my own problems. Every instance where I'd felt used, manipulated, or guilted into giving the list was 11 pages long, single-spaced, 11 pages of moments where I'd abandoned myself to save them. And in that moment, sitting in that office with those pages spread out in front of me like evidence of a crime, I realized something profound that would change the trajectory of my entire life. This wasn't about being selfish. This was about survival. I wasn't their ATM machine. I wasn't their emergency fund or their backup plan. I wasn't their retirement strategy or their financial safety net. I was a human being with my own dreams, my own limits, my own life that deserved to be lived. And saying no wasn't cruelty. It was self-preservation. The months after I said no were simultaneously the hardest and most liberating of my entire life. I blocked numbers that only called with emergencies. I muted the family group chat that had become a source of constant anxiety. I stopped checking it obsessively, stopped letting their words dictate my mood, my day, my sense of self-worth. I set boundaries I should have set a decade ago, boundaries that felt terrifying but necessary. And then something incredible started happening, something I'd almost forgotten was possible. I started saving real money, not money that was earmarked for someone else's crisis, but money that was actually mine. Within 6 months, I had $10,000 in savings that belonged only to me, money I could use for my dreams, my emergencies, my future. I booked a trip to Italy, something I'd dreamed about since college, but had never been able to afford because someone always needed something more urgently. I spent 2 weeks wandering through Rome and Florence and Venice, eating pasta and gelato, standing in front of art that made me cry, feeling like myself for the first time in years. I felt light. I felt free. I could breathe deeply without the constant weight of other people's expectations crushing my chest. The panic attacks stopped. I started sleeping through the night. I laughed more. I smiled without forcing it. My real friends, the ones who'd watched me struggle and fade for years, told me they were proud of me. One friend said something that I wrote down and kept on my bathroom mirror. "Sarah, you didn't abandon your family. You stopped enabling them." There's a difference, and it's important. That distinction mattered more than I can express. Enabling isn't helping. Enabling is participating in someone else's dysfunction while destroying yourself in the process. Real help empowers people. Enabling keeps them dependent, keeps them from growing, keeps them from facing the consequences of their choices. I grieved the family I thought I had, the family I'd wanted us to be. I grieved the daughter role I'd played for so long, even though it had been killing me. Grief is strange when you're mourning something that never really existed in the first place. But here's the twist that nobody saw coming, least of all me. 6 months after I said no, my brother got his life together. Without me as his safety net, he had to face reality. He found a better job with benefits. He started budgeting, actually tracking his spending and living within his means. He rented an apartment he could actually afford instead of always overextending and then calling me for rescue. My sister reached out 8 months later, not asking for money, but to apologize. She admitted she'd taken advantage of me. She said she'd seen me as an easy solution instead of a sister, a person with feelings and limits. She said she was sorry, and she meant it. We're rebuilding slowly, carefully, with actual boundaries this time. My parents took the longest. That relationship is still complicated, still healing, but eventually we sat down and had a real conversation, not about money or favors or what I could do for them, but about respect, about boundaries, about what family actually means when you strip away all the manipulation and guilt. I learned that saying no doesn't make you cruel, it makes you honest. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do for someone is refuse to participate in their chaos. Sometimes you have to let people fail so they can learn to save themselves. So what did I learn from being everyone's ATM for 10 years? What wisdom came from that painful, expensive, emotionally devastating decade? First, financial abuse doesn't always look violent or obvious. Sometimes it looks like love. Sometimes it looks like need. Sometimes it wears the face of family and speaks in the language of obligation. But abuse is abuse, even when it comes wrapped in guilt trips and tear-filled phone calls, even when it's your own mother asking, even when they preface it with "we raised you." Second, you cannot pour from an empty cup. For years, I thought martyrdom was virtue, that suffering for others made me good, made me worthy, made me loved. But all it did was make me resentful, broke, and bitter. I wasn't helping them by destroying myself. I was just creating 2 problems instead of solving 1/3. Boundaries aren't walls. They're bridges to healthier relationships. The people who truly love you will respect your limits. They'll understand that no doesn't mean I don't love you. It means I love myself too. The ones who can't respect that, they never loved you. They loved what you could do for them, what you could provide, how you could solve their problems without them having to change. Today, I live in a home I own. I have savings and retirement accounts and a life that's actually mine. I have dreams again, plans that don't include rescuing anyone. And yes, I still help my family sometimes, but it's on my terms now, when I choose to, when it doesn't hurt me, when it's genuine help that empowers rather than enabling that imprisons. Our relationship is different now. Honestly, it's better. It's based on respect instead of transaction. It's based on mutual care instead of one-sided sacrifice. It's not perfect, and it never will be, but it's real in a way it never was before. If you're watching this and you see yourself in my story, if you recognize that sinking feeling in your stomach every time your phone rings, if you're tired of being everyone's solution while nobody asks about your problems, I want you to know something crucial. You are not selfish for having boundaries. You are not cruel for protecting your peace. You are not abandoning anyone by refusing to drown alongside them. You are not a bad person for wanting a life of your own. The day you stop being their ATM is the day you start being yourself. And that's not selfishness. That's not coldness. That's not cruelty. That's self-preservation, and you deserve it just as much as anyone else. This is Sarah's story, but maybe it's your story too. Maybe you're living it right now, feeling that weight, questioning whether you have the right to say no. And if you are, I'm telling you this because I wish someone had told me 10 years ago, say no. Just once. See what happens. The world won't end. Your family won't disappear. And you might discover something beautiful on the other side of that word. You might discover yourself. You deserve a life that's yours, not borrowed, not obligated, not sacrificed. Yours. Go claim it.